Hello guys, welcome back to our Java class. Okay, uh, a quick recap on the things we did last week. And by the way, if you are yet to download the Java compiler or the NetBeans IDE, you can quickly follow these links to get them. Like I mentioned to you guys in school, I said you can also come to my office and have them. Just come with your flash and I will give them to you. But if you want to follow these links, I just copy this link now. You can just go to your browser, or better still, you can always Google these things. You can always Google this stuff. So you can search for JDK download, or you say JDK 8 because that's what we are using for this course. You can say JDK 8 download, and that will take you to the Oracle website. Okay, Oracle are the owners of Java. So from here you can download, you can click on Java download slash Oracle, and it will take you to the Oracle website. Okay, you see here that we have version 17 available already, but that's not what we are looking for. We are looking for later versions. We still have 11, but we are looking for JDK 8, right? Okay, that's not exactly what I'm looking for right now. I'm looking for Java Development Kit 8. Okay, yes. So this is where I find it. On this drop down arrow. So I have to go down and look for Windows. Windows. This is Windows here. So I want to install my, yes, yeah, I have to look for my operating system. So I know my operating system is Windows 64-bit. So this is what I should be installing. Okay. Oh, sorry about that. That's Java runtime environment, not the Java development kit. I'm looking for the Java development kit. Please, Java development kit is up here. Uh, Under Java 8, see Java 8 is here. Then I select Windows, and this is my installer. This is the installer I want to install for my 64-bit operating system. So the first thing to do is to install, I think I should write that here. For those who are just joining us for the first time, install JDK 8. How do I install JDK 8? Go to Oracle website. That's the first thing you do. Then navigate to Java 8. Navigate to Java 8. Then select your operating system. Select your operating system. And then download the proper one, but ensure you are not downloading the JRE. Make sure you are downloading the JDK. Okay, so once you download that, you install it. The next thing you want to do is to install Java NetBeans. To install NetBeans IDE, not really Java NetBeans, but NetBeans IDE. Again, we can quickly use Google. So I can go to Google and type NetBeans. So I'll look for NetBeans download. Of course, a lot of people have downloaded NetBeans, so Google will quickly show us some or give us recommendations very quickly. And again, don't install Apache NetBeans. Okay, so it's this NetBeans IDE 8.2 free download. That's what you should be downloading. And yeah, it's just there. It takes you right there. If you click on this download button now, it's going to generate a zipped file for you to install. Okay, so once you have those two installed, then you are good to go. Like I said, in this series we started last week, and we did our first Java program. We did our first Java program last week. First Java program. We went on to do to look at variables and data types, and we saw different data types and how we can use them in Java. We went on to write very simple applications for addition and division. So we wrote simple applications for mathematical operations, and those mathematical operations were simple division, or let me start from addition because we did some sum last week. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, and we also did some division. And we saw how we save all these programs that we that did addition, subtraction, multiplication. We saw how we could save our results into variables because we had earlier seen variables. Okay, then we proceeded further, and this is where we left off last week, to look at selection statements in Java. So selection statements in Java. And the specific selection statement that we saw were if statement, if else statement. And we wrote the simple age checker application, if you can remember. That's where we really left off. Today we are starting something different, and we are still looking at programming constructs. You know, programming constructs are into two categories: selection statements that make use of if and else, and then we have iteration or looping statements that repeats a block of code over and over and over again. So today we want to look at, let me number it as number 5, and we are looking at iteration. Another name for iteration, like I said, is looping, and in some textbooks you will see them written as repetition, because it's actually just a repetition. Okay, I hope I got the spelling of my repetition right. If I did, please forgive me. So this is what we're going to focus on today, and yes, this is what we'll focus on today. So quickly, let me mention that Java has 3 types of looping statements. So Java has 3 types of looping statements. I want to see each of them and write simple applications that implement each of them. So what's the first looping statement that Java has? It is called a while loop. So it's called a while loop. The second one is called the do while loop. It's a cousin to this to the while loop. Yes, I prefer to call them cousins because there's just a very little difference between the two of them. So the do while loop. And the third one is the for loop. So you can call this for loop, or you can also call it for statement, while statement, sorry. And you can also call the other one do while loop, or you prefer to call it do while statement, you still be correct. And the same thing with this one. So having mentioned these 3 loop statements, these 3 types of iteration statements, we will now take them one after the other and look at what their syntax is like and how we can write them in our NetBeans IDE. So let's hop over to NetBeans IDE, and once you're in NetBeans IDE, I decided to start with a very fresh page so that those who are joining us for the first time can also follow along. Okay, so once you launch your NetBeans IDE, remember I just showed you the steps to download it, and I've also said that if you are unable to download it for any reason, you can meet me in the office and get my own version and just install on your machine. Okay, so once it's installed, you start over like this. You're always going to start from file, because this is NetBeans, and then you go to new project and you want to select Java application. You can see it here. So it's Java and it's Java application, and then just click next. Now once you click next, it's going to bring up this dialog box that allows you to give a name to your first project or first program, whatever you choose to call it. So I'm going to call this while loop. Okay, so I've decided to call this project while loop, and I advise you to leave everything else as they are and just click finish. So I've clicked finish, and I'm going to wait for my program now to start off for me. So it has started off for me, and it comes inside of a package called while loop, because that's the name I gave to the application while I was creating it. And then it's inside of a class called the while loop class. Please, if any of these things look strange to you, if you observe I'm just deleting out some comments, please refer back to the previous video that I made on this. That's just the video before this one, where we explained why we use packages, why we use classes, why we have this method, and why this method has to be inside of this class called the while loop. Okay, if you watch that video, you'll just be up running with us. Today we want to write our code to implement a while loop. Don't forget, like I explained from last week, that all the codes we are going to be writing in this introductory series must live inside of the public static void main argument method. Okay, public static void main method. All right, so that while loop that I just mentioned is going to live inside of here, and whenever you start NetBeans like this, NetBeans asks you to shows you where to write your code, so we can just delete that, and we know that's where we're supposed to write our code. And then what's the first thing we want to do? We want to look at the while loop syntax. So let me see the while loop syntax. That's the first thing we want to see. Now the while loop syntax starts with the keyword while. As you would have rightly observed, immediately I typed while, the color changed to blue because NetBeans recognizes that as a keyword for Java. So while, and then inside of here I'm going to put a condition. Okay, I'm going to put condition. So it's going to check the condition, and if the condition is true, it will continue doing whatever I put inside of these braces. So this is the basic syntax for a while loop. While this condition is not just a condition but a Boolean condition. We explained what Booleans are in our last class. Booleans are variables that will always have a yes or a no, true or false values. Okay, so it is while that Boolean condition remains true that what is inside of this while loop braces will continue happening. Okay, so I can have one or more statements inside of here, and as long as the condition that is stated up here is true, what I have inside of these braces will keep repeating and just keep doing over and over and over and over again. Okay, so now that we have said that, can we now look at a simple example of how a while loop works? Yes, we can. And in order to make a simple example of how a while loop works, we will have to introduce a variable that will be inside of these braces. The variable is what we are going to use to set our Boolean condition. So let me say, for example, that I want to do a while loop that will continually ask users to enter a number, and then it will always bring the multiple. That's a multiple. It will always bring the double of that number. So we want to write a program that doubles a number, whatever number a user enters. So we can simply let me put a comment here to describe that. This program doubles any number a user enters. Any number a user enters. So that's what this program is going to do. Okay, in order to do that, I want to set a variable, and that variable is going, let me call it I, and I will set it at the first instance to be 1. I'll explain to you guys why I'm setting this to be 1. Then I'm going to, in my while loop, I'm going to put a condition that while this I, you see, I is originally 1, right? So I'm going to say while I is not equal to 0, while I remains greater than 0. Yes, let's say greater than 0. While I remains greater than 0, what do I want my program to be doing while I is greater than 0? I want it first of all to request from the user. So I'll do that system.out.println. I explained these things, how to use the scanner class and all of that in the previous video. Just in case you don't know what we are doing now, please refer to it and be up and doing. So system.out.println, I'll ask the user to enter a number, a positive number for that matter. Enter a positive number. Okay, Now what do I want to do with that positive number? Remember, because I'm going to use the scanner class, let me quickly import the scanner class. We did this from the last class. Import java.util.scanner. So I'm going to be using scanner, so I've imported it there. And now because I'm going to be using scanner, I have to make an object of the scanner class here. So I'll come out and say scanner sc is equal to new scanner system.in. So now I can use this value here. Now I can use this value, and yes, so I can say int I is equal to sc dot what dot next int. Okay, I don't need to redeclare this again. It's already declared up here, so I don't need to redeclare it again. So I is equal to sc.next int, and before I will do that, I will also have to print out enter a positive number is what I said there. Okay, now that line of code should come up here. So I'm going to print out. Remember, I showed you guys a shortcut to doing this last week. System.out.println. So system.out.println, the double of the number that will concatenate here, number plus I, then I'll put another concatenation here, is plus I times I. Remember, we are doubling. So because we are doubling, we are doing this statement I plus I. Something is wrong somewhere. Let me quickly figure that out. Okay, this is it. So here we go. But I is originally equal to 1. Okay, so I is 1. I will double I, so I will check, is I greater than 0? Yes, I is greater than 0. So if I is greater than 0, I want to double it. So the statement for doubling it is this one here. So I times I, it gets doubled, okay, and it gets printed out. Then it will ask me again to enter another number. Okay, so I'll enter another number. And when I enter another number, it will, this line here receives that other number that I've entered. This line receives that number that I've entered, and then it goes back again and prints this value of I for me. So let's actually see how this program is behaving. So I'm going to run it now. And to run my program for the first time, I'll right click and I'll select run file. So let's see how it's going to behave. So the double of 1 is 1. Let me make space here to get a better format there. Why did it say the double of 1 is 1? Because at the first instance, I was set to 1. Okay, at the first instance I set I to 1. So it's going to tell me the double of 1 is 1. So the double of 1 is 1. Now let me change I to 2 and run this application again. So I've changed I to 2. Meanwhile, I have to stop the first running because it's still there. That's the problem with while loop. It's not going to stop running. So this is my stop. Output. This is what I'm looking for. Okay. So let me stop it first. So I'll run it again. Now it's going to tell me the double of 2 is 4, right? Now it's asking me for another number, so I enter 6. I hit enter. It tells me the double of 6 is 36, which is very correct. So I want to try another number again, 3. It will tell me the double of 3 is 9. And it's asking me for another number again, 7. It tells me the double of 7 is 49. It's asking me for another number, 89. And it tells me the double of 89 is 7,921. Now this is how a while loop typically behaves. Now, how do I stop this program? I can stop this program by entering 0 because the condition here says as long as I remains greater than what? I remains greater than 0. So if I want to stop this application now, it means I'll enter a number less than 0. So, or a number that is equal to 0. So I put 0, or let me put -1, and my program will now go away. Okay, it now terminate. This is how a typical while loop works. The while loop starts by checking the condition here. If that condition is true, it goes into the loop body, and observe that the loop body is indicated by the opening and close braces. Now, once that condition is met, this condition here is met, it will execute everything that is outlined inside of that braces, and it will keep doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it so long as that condition remains true. So this is how a typical while loop behaves. And we can still do another program here. This time around, let's just find the sum of 10 numbers. Okay, let's just find the sum of the numbers from 1 to 10. We're going to just look for the sum of numbers from 1 to 10. So if we're doing the numbers from 1 to 10, then we want to set this variable here to be 1, because we want to start from 1 and get up to 10. Okay, now what's going to be our condition? Our condition is going to say as long as I, which is presently 1, remains less or equal to 10. So as long as this I currently is 1, as long as it remains less or equal to 10, we want to be doing something. We just want to be printing I out. So now I don't need my scanner class anymore, because I don't need it. I just don't need it. So I'll do south there is for system.out.println, and I will say I just want to print the number out. I just want to print I out. Okay, I don't want to add any statement to it. So what do you think is going to happen? At the first iteration, I is equal to 1. Is 1 less than 10? Yes. So it's going to print I out for me. But I want to do something here. I must increment the value of I, and I can say I is equal to I plus 1. Because if I don't increment the value of I will perpetually remain 1, and that will make my loop to enter an infinite behavior. So it will just keep iterating and iterating and printing that 1. So now if we run this application, see what it's going to give us. So it gives us the number. If you can see, it gives us the number from 1 to 10. You see, so we just had the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and up to 10. Okay, so that is how a while loop typically behaves. It kept checking this condition. So long as I remain less than 10, it was just printing it prints I on this line, and then it increments the value of I on this other line, and then it goes back to check. So at the first iteration, I was 1 because we set it to 1. 1 is less than 10, yes, so it prints this line. Now it adds 1 to that I, so it has incremented the value of I. So at the second iteration, I has become 2. Is 2 less than 10? Yes, 2 is less than 10. So it prints 2, and then it increases it to 3 on this line. It goes back again to check. Is 3 less than 10? Yes. So it prints 3, and then it increases it to 4 and goes back to check again. Is 4 less than 10? Yes. So it prints out 4. It increases it to 5, and then it goes on and on again. That's why we have the output that we have here. Okay, that's why we have the output that we have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now I want you to think, is there a way I can do this same thing, this same program, and make it to print out the sum of numbers from 1 to 10? Yes, there is a way you can do it, and I want you to try it and show me in the office as your own attempt, and let's see those who will get it correctly. Okay, so make sure you try sum of numbers from 1 to 10 with the while loop. And then another thing you can also try is, when we run this code now, we printed from 1 to 10. Okay, can you try to do this in the opposite way? So you want to print from 10 to 1, descending order. What we have printed here is in an ascending order. I want you to also try how to use a while loop to print numbers in descending order, and I'll be happy to see that in the office. Okay, all right, so we have just looked at the first type of Java looping statement, the while loop. Let's quickly look at the cousin of while loop, which is the do while loop, and it's a very easy one also. Very, very interesting application use of while loop. There's just a single difference. Okay, the single difference between a while loop and the do while loop is that in the while loop, the condition is checked first before anything is done. So you just have to check your condition first before anything is done. But that is not so with the do while loop. The do while loop, we will put a do here. So observe what I'm going to do. I'm just cutting out this condition. That's all I've done. Then I'll replace it with do, and then I'll come behind here and I'll fix my condition back and I'll put a semicolon. Nothing really changed, right? But that little difference that I made there will make this loop to run at least one time. So the do while loop runs the body of code first, then goes to check if the condition is true. If the condition is true, it goes back again and it continues the loop the same way that the while loop was behaving. So let me run it again and you will observe the output. Do you see any difference in the output? Really, there's no difference in the output. But I can show you where there's a difference. If I make this condition false, this condition now is false because I is no longer less than 11. I is actually greater than 11, greater than 10 because I changed I to 11. Now let me run this and you observe something. It will run at least once. It printed I at least once. Because I was 11, so it printed I for the first time. So the do while loop is guaranteed to run at least once. It's guaranteed to run at least once. If I change this back to how it was before, so let me cut this and take this one away or remove this semicolon here. Now observe what's going to happen. This condition is false from the very beginning. So if I try to run this application, it's not going to give me any output because the condition is false. Can you see? I had no output. But that was not so with the do while loop. The do while loop, I ensure that you can look at it again. The do while loop ensure that I had that condition run at least once. Okay, so that is just the difference between the while loop and the do while loop. You see, we'll get 11 there as output. That's just the difference. The do while loop ensures that your program is run at least once because it's going to run it once before checking if the condition is true or false. All right, guys. So use whatever one that is most convenient for you. But the important thing I want you to do is to make sure that you write a do while loop or a while loop that finds the sum of numbers from 1 to 10, and then do another one that will print numbers in descending order 10 to 1 or 100 to 1. Okay, having said that, let's quickly move over to the third looping statement that we have in Java. So the third looping statement we have in Java is the for loop. The for loop is the third looping statement we have in Java, and it's a very interesting looping construct. Okay, now I want you to observe something that we have done so far. Observe that while we use any of these loops, we have three parts to each of them. There is a part whereby we created our variable, the variable that we use to control the behavior, to control the condition of the loop. So that's one part. There is another part where we stated a condition. Can you see? We have another condition. We have a part for the condition. Then we have another part whereby we kept changing the value of that variable. So every looping construct in Java has three basic parts. The first part is where you created a variable. We call it variable initialization. The second part is where you put the condition that should be true while that loop operates, and then the third part is where you increment. Let me write out those things. So I'm saying that every loop in Java has three parts. What's the first part? It is the variable initialization. The second part is the condition. The third part is change or update. Let me call it change of variable or update. Now, if you don't change the variable or if you don't update the variable, it means this condition, there's no likelihood that this condition will turn false at any time. And you want your loop to behave and continue doing whatever it is doing while the condition is true. So at some point you want that condition to turn false. So if you don't update this variable, your condition is never ever going to turn to false. So I've mentioned these three parts that every loop statement has in Java, and this is not just about Java. We find the same thing in C#, C++, and every other language that we have around. Okay, now if you look at the do while loop that we have on the screen right now, we find our variable initialization here, which is what I mentioned here, the first part, variable initialization. We just find a way to do it, okay? But most times in our while and do while loop, we do this variable initialization outside of the loop itself, outside of the loop. You see the loop begins with these two braces. So that's the first part. The second part is the condition, okay? Now in the condition, you see here that for the do while loop, the condition is somewhere at the end of the statement, but for the while loop the condition would have been right up here, okay? But the important thing is that that part of the loop exists. All right, then finally I said an update or a change to the variable. We find that here for the do while loop. We also find that at the same place for the while loop. So now quickly let's go and do a for loop, and then we'll see how for loop represents these three the for loop will represent these three parts of a loop construct. So I'm starting a fresh program altogether, new project like I showed us before, and then I'll go ahead and say for loop example. So let me call it for loop example, and I'll click finish. So here we go. We have our fresh program, and I usually like taking away these comments. They are not important to me. So I'm taking away all those comments. And here I am with my fresh template to write my code. So what did I say we are doing? For loops. So now let's see the syntax of a for loop. The syntax of the for loop. The idea of the for loop is that for loop it's compact. It puts all those three parts of a loop together. So you're always going to start with for. You type the keyword for, you open and close a braces, then you put your variable initialization here. So int I is equal to 0 or whatever you want to do. Remember how we did it for the while loop before? We put it outside of the loop, right? But in the for loop, we'll put it inside here, and then we'll put a semicolon. The next thing we want to put a condition. This condition will be I. Let's do less than 10 again. Okay, no, let's start from 1 so that our example will be the same thing with what we had before. So equal to 10. And then what do we want to do next? We want to update I++. Now it's either I do I++ or I can also do I is equal to I plus 1. It's the same thing, okay? It's the same thing. It's just a more fancy way. And whenever we do I++, we're just being fanciful, okay? And making our code also to have less number of lines or keystrokes. We reduce the number of keystrokes. Okay, see, so what have I done? These are the three parts of the loop that we saw before from our while loop. This is the initialization. This is the condition. This is the update. This is typically of how a for loop is. Now, inside of this for loop, which is this provision from this brace to this brace, is where I will write what I want my code to do. So for example, the program we just saw that outputted 10 numbers. How do I want to do that? I want to output 10 numbers, right? So I'll put an output statement here, and our popular output statement that we have been using all along is system.out.println. And what do I want to print? I just want to print that I. Okay, so if I'm going to print that I, this is all I need to do. And now let's run this program. We're running it for the first time, so I simply do right click and I select run file. So can you see what we got? See what we've got. The same output 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now it's because this loop started at 1. So at the first iteration, it sees that this is 1. It will check is I less than 10. That is 1 less than 10. Yes. It will come and print this line out. And then it will go up here and update this line. It goes back again to check because once you update this, it becomes 2. Is 2 less or equal to 10? Yes. So it prints out this value. and then goes again to update. And that's how he just kept doing and doing and doing and doing and just kept going. Okay. Now, for the previous example we did, with the first example we did was a program that would just keep asking the user to enter a number, and then it will double that number and bring out the double of that number. Now, there's something important that you need to know in the difference between a while loop and a for loop. Whenever you are using a for loop, you know exactly the number of times you want to go. So a for loop allows you to know exactly how many times your loop will run. Your loop will run. So this is what a for loop does. It makes you to know exactly how many times your loop is going to run. But the while loop allows you to leave that open. So while we did a program for the while loop, we kept asking the user, just enter a number. As long as the number is not less than 0, it will keep giving us the sum, giving us the doubling and doubling and doubling. If we are done, if we are tired, we just enter a number that is less or equal to 0, and then the doubling will stop. That was what we did. Now look at that same program now. If we wanted to do the same thing with a for loop, we can now ask the user, but we know it's going to go for only 10 times. So let me go and bring back my scanner class. So I'll do import. Please, like I said, if you don't know what we're doing with import or what scanner class, then please visit the previous video. It will get you started. Okay. So import java.util.scanner. Then let me make an object of that scanner class inside of my main method. So I'll say scanner in is equal to new scanner system.in. So there I am. So here I want to keep asking the user now to enter a number, and whatever number the user enters, I will double it and hand it back to him. But the user can only do that 10 times. Okay, that's the thing with the while loop. So let me go now and say SOUT helps us to quickly write the system.out.println. So you can always type SOUT and then hit your tab key, and it gives that to you. So enter the number. So the user enters a number at this line, and then what do I want to do with the number again? I want to receive that number from the user. So I can come here now and say int number, let me call it number, or num for short, or even n for shorter, is equal to in.nextInt. NextInt is right up there. So while I do this, what do I want to do with this in? I want to output the double of it, isn't it? So I'll simply let me make it longer, not necessarily, but let me just create a variable here called doubled value, int double n. So let me call it doubled n, because I've doubled n is equal to n times n. So double n is equal to n times n. And what do I want to do? I want to print out the doubled value. So let's just print out the doubled value. And what I want to do here now is I want to print n on one side and then print the double on the other side. So n that the user enters will be here. I'll concatenate it, and then I'll say the doubled value is. So I just want to put some fancy stuff here. Okay, the doubled value is. Then I'll put doubled value here, doubled n here. Yeah, I know I'm gonna complain about that. So now let's see what we get as our output. So it's going to be doing this how many times? 10 times, because our loop is set to run 10 times. Don't forget that. Okay, so it asked me to enter a number, so I entered 2. The double value is 4. Okay, now let me change this. I don't like that. I don't like the 2 that is coming first, so let me quickly change this. So I don't need this here. I don't need that there. So let's go again. So enter a number 2, the double value is 4. I enter 6, the double value is 36. I enter 7 now, the double value is 49. And it will keep asking me until I get up to 10. So let's quickly run it. So I got up to 10 and then it stops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can actually count and see that it's actually 10. Okay, so I enter 10 numbers and then it stops. While this and therein lies the fundamental difference between for loop and while loop. For the for loop, I knew from the beginning that I'm going to do this 10 times. In the while loop, I can just go and keep asking the user to enter the next number, enter the next number. As long as the user is entering the next number, and the number meets the condition. You know, the condition said while is greater than while the number is greater than 0, it will keep giving us a double number. Now, I don't want to introduce so much complexity just yet. I would have also shown you how we can use the break statement to break out of our for loop before we meet this condition of 10. So there are some instances that, okay, yes, I want this for loop to run 10 times, but just in case I hit this particular extra condition, just break out of the loop. So in those kind of situations, you are not going to have to do up to 10 times before your loop may break. The twin brother of break statement is a continuous statement that makes us to skip one of the iterations. But in this introductory series, I am not bringing that out yet. I just want you guys to become very familiar with how to use the basic for loop, the basic while loop, and the basic do while loop. And if you practice these three things that I just shown you quickly here, I'm sure you will not have any problems getting your footing right. So what have we done in today's video? We have seen the while loop. We have also seen the do while loop. We have also seen the for loop. And we have used both of them to write simple programs that doubles number. And don't forget that the important thing is not just because we are doubling numbers or we are printing out numbers from 1 to 10 or 10 to 0. The important thing is that we are repeating code. So whatever has been stated inside of our for loop, like what I have highlighted here, is going to be repeated 10 times. So that's the important thing that you must know. So if I wanted to be receiving a number and be sending out the square root of those numbers, I can implement it here. If I wanted to be receiving a number and just be doing the same thing over and over, I can implement it here. So the key idea for loops, while, do, while, for, is that you just want to repeat code until a condition becomes false. You just want to keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. Okay, so it's nice having you guys here today. And then next up in our series is an introduction to functions in Java. Functions. How do we write our own functions? And that's when things will start getting more interesting as we begin to write our own functions. Okay, all along, if you observe, we'll be writing all our code inside of a function here called a main method. Please, functions and methods refer to the same thing. Every other language calls it function, but Java calls it method. So forgive me if I use those two words interchangeably. Okay, I may say function, I may say method, but the proper thing I should use, since this is a Java series, is method. Okay, so we're going to see how we're going to start writing our own methods. When we've done writing our own method, then we can go to the next item we have in this series, and that's how to use graphical user interfaces. And from there, we'll now choose a program and then a project for this series, and then we'll complete it. Okay, so coming up next is methods in Java. What is a method? How do I write a method? How do I call a method? Okay, so I'll see you guys in the next one. God bless you. Bye bye.